Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Virginia. Today I'm going to go over the solar eclipse and the fall equinox. And today's video is sponsored by me and my book because I have to pay my bills. And this is a book about you. Here will go your name, your natal chart, the table of contents, an introduction, my bio, your natal chart, your numerology, then your lunar progressions, that is like a chapter in your life, and then we have horoscope for a whole year, other offers of my readings, my contact information, and that's it, folks. Contact me for your copy. And back to the eclipse. This is a solar eclipse on September 21st at 3:53 p.m. Eastern Time, and this is in the sign of Virgo. Solar eclipses are new moons, and this is the second new moon in Virgo. Last month we had one at 0 degrees, and this one is at 29 degrees, which are both critical degrees because of the beginning and the end of the sign. And new moons are new beginnings, and when it's in an eclipse, is a new beginning on steroids because eclipses accelerate karma. And an eclipse is basically a new moon on the ecliptic of the sun, which causes to hide the sun from the perspective of the earth. And you can see that in the graph in the upper right hand corner. Now this is a little bit of a paradox because this new moon eclipse is conjunct the south node of endings. So this is a new beginning that comes at the cost of a termination or a completion, like when you graduate from a program that is a prerequisite to start another one. And this eclipse is somehow similar to the one that we had on mid-March. So some of the same themes might repeat. Now, Virgo is a mutable earth sign, so it helps us by being adaptable to change and remaining grounded and centered in spite of the changes. And some of the Virgo characteristics are precision, dedications, service, and this is ruled by Mercury, which is very analytical. But the shadow side is to being too critical, nitpicky, and perfectionist to the point that you set the bar so high that it's unachievable. The archetype of Virgo is the nurse, and it rules health, routine, work, service, and pets in general. And is a Caden house, which refers to a decreased energy, a weakness. Globally, it rules the healthcare system, the service industry, hospitality, livestock, and therefore food and employment in general. But this is from the perspective of the earth. If we go to the helio chart, which is from the perspective of the sun, the earth would be in the sign of Pisces, which is spiritual and it rules waters, therefore emotions. And whenever the moon is involved, the moon rules emotions and the body as it rules water too, and we're 70% water. But Virgo, as is ruled by Mercury, which is all about reason, this is a very all-encompassing body, mind, spirit energy. Mercury is information and data. And this eclipse is located in the third decan of Virgo, which is mutable within mutable. So another indication for change. And this decan is ruled by Venus, which seeks harmony, beauty, and love. And the symbol for Mercury is that of Venus plus the crescent moon on top. So the moon represents receptivity over the circle of wholeness, which is also infinity as there's no end and no beginning, like the Ouroboros, that is the snake eating its tail. And that is over the cross of spirit over matter, manifested in a very physical, practical reality. So this eclipse is going to be both emotional and rational, spiritual and material. And in general, it's going to impact our daily lives or our health or our work or all of the above. But later on, we'll see where in your chart it will play out depending on your sign. And this eclipse is conjunct its ruler by orb, but out of sign, because Mercury is in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. But Venus is in Virgo and is also the ruler of the third decan where this eclipse is. So both Venus and Mercury are working together because they are in mutual reception, as they much rather change places. So Mercury is all about communication and Venus is all about diplomacy. So we're trying. But the eclipse is at 29 degrees, that is like a pressure cooker. And it represents the ending of one energy and the beginning of another, a turning point, no pun intended. And with 29 degrees, there is some kind of drama and internal pressure. And this eclipse is in an aversion, which is like a blind spot with Mars, the planet of aggression, that is also at 29 degrees, but in Libra, where Mars is afflicted. So Mars is tired of diplomacy and repressing its aggression. And Mars is feeling more sensitive than he would like to. And later on, we're going to see how these planets are going to change for the equinox. But the eclipse is also in an opposition with Saturn, that is the planet of limitations, restrictions, and constrictions. It's a planet of boundaries and karma. And it's almost at 29 degrees of Pisces. But in evolutionary astrology, Saturn says no because he's protecting you. So either you're not ready for what you want or it's not in your path. And the eclipse is also in an opposition but out of sign with Neptune in Aries. Neptune is the planet of confusion and ruler of Pisces, where Saturn is. And Pisces is very emotional and Aries is very confrontational. So expect some kind of confrontation or restrictions that triggers a change where we have to let go of something in order to start anew. Now, the positive thing is that this opposition is the axis of a kite. And a kite is an overall beneficial energy because it's composed by a grand trine representing an opportunity and a grand sextile representing a flow. The difference between both is that one requires some personal effort in order to receive the goods, and this eclipse is all about personal efforts. But we also have a couple of squares adding tension to the picture. Venus, which represents what we want, is at odds with Uranus, that is unexpected events, like an inconvenience. Mars, which represents action, is at odds with Pluto, the planet of transformation. So this is challenging us to change the way we act or react. And thankfully Jupiter, which magnifies everything it touches, is in harmony with the eclipse, but is square Chiron, the wounded healer, amplifying our issues in order to overcome them. And Chiron is also at the midpoint of Jupiter and Pluto, asking us to bury the old self in order to expand. And the grand trine is between the eclipse and planets in air sign, stressing the need to prioritize rational thought. And the grand sextile is among outer planets, so it's going to sustain for a while, affecting a generation. And this is a very important time in history and is very pivotal because it depends on us if we raise the bar into utopia or if we fall into dystopia. And with all the planets retrograde, we all need to review the direction we're heading to. And 29 degrees is like the last chance we had to clean up our act. And finally, we have three yods that are what we call fingers of God, pointing to three planets. Mars, representing our aggression and our actions. Chiron, representing our wounds, our insecurities, and victimhood mentality. And Neptune, representing confusion and delusion that is by design manufactured through deception, what I like to call the weapons of mass distraction. So we need to wake up from the spell because both sides are being played. Now, stop reacting to the triggers and the victimhood narratives that end up manifesting that which is what you want to avoid in the first place. And this is not a bad eclipse. Let's look at the scores on the lower left. They add up to 7, which is a pretty decent scoring, but also 7 is a spiritual number. And just in case you haven't noticed, we are in a spiritual war. And this is a war against humanity from the elites. Now, if you see above the speed of the planets, the luminaries are slow, and this is enduring lessons that come over time as things develop, because so lessons cannot happen overnight. And this is the energy of the eclipse, that it lasts about 6 months up until the next eclipse season. Then the rest of the personal planets are actually going pretty fast, and these are quick events, immediate reactions, which is what we have to be careful with. And I would advise to everyone to practice the art of non-reaction. At the beginning, it can feel a bit limiting, but then you realize how much power you harness when you're not that easily manipulated. And these are everyday lessons and instant karma. And the outer planets or retrograde, working on the collective internalization and re-evaluation of recent events, causing delays to make sure that we take a minute. And these are more karmic lessons, because if we don't like where we are, we have to acknowledge our participation or lack thereof in the current events. And this is an umbrella that goes from the haters to the enablers and everyone in between. Because Pluto, the planet of transformation, is out of bounds by a couple of minutes, so is on the edge of the sun's declination, which is the domain of the sun. So is pushing the envelope, is past the limit, is the threshold, the turning point, giving the collective an edge for evolution, or should I say re-evolution, which usually manifests in revolution. But this is not to instill fear, as it does not have to look aggressive. Like Gandhi, the biggest revolution would be not to react to the triggers. And we already seen that as people are uniting in prayers and vigils, which have raised the Schumann resonance. And with the eclipse, we have the star Betelgeuse reaching culmination. And this is the red giant star located at the shoulder of the constellation of Orion, which is south of the constellation of Taurus. And this star means good fortune that comes from integrity and substance behind the shine. Otherwise, it crumbles. So it's no longer about the shape or the form or the container, it's about the content. And apply that to everything, from beauty standards to reputation. Like, who cares about celebrities anymore? Unless they're actually making a difference in the world, like Keanu Reeves, that is real and everybody likes him. Now, this eclipse belongs to a family of eclipses, what we call the Saros cycle, and this is the number 125, that began in February 1060 and will conclude in 2311. And the eclipses repeat approximately every 18 years and change, but the themes associated with this family of eclipses are physical concern, worry, and obsessive thinking. And this is a very Plutonian theme because it's a planet of death, rebirth, and transformation. And the original eclipse does not have much in common with today's eclipse, except for the fact that Pluto is in Aquarius, that is the collective. Now, back then they did not know about Pluto yet because it was discovered later on in 1930. But Pluto has a regeneration force and is the planet of demolition in order to rebuild. And back in the days, we see how feudal systems were shifting to the rise of towns and universities. And if we compare that to nowadays, the elites plan to do 15-minute cities. Now, there were advances in technologies from windmills to water mills and mechanical devices. And nowadays, we see the advancement of AI and quantum computers. And there were also religious and political movements challenging authority. The proto-reformist currents that later on, at the end of the Pluto in Aquarius term by 1070, started another fourth turning. The concept of the fourth turning revolution is best explained by the phrase that said, "Bad times created strong men created good times created weak men, and weak men created bad times, and so it all begins again." And that's where we are at now, yet again. Now, the events that happened in 1016 were the death of a king, and nowadays we have a sick king, so we'll see what happened with that. Then we had the dethroning of the king of Hungary at the time with the help of Polish troops, and today we have Hungary making energy deals with Russia, which doesn't favor Ukraine and raises tensions with Poland. And astronomically, there was a comet that was observed for 7 nights straight. And today we have 3i Atlas that was now deemed not a comet, but an alien probe. So I expect a lot more news about this in the next coming months. And we will have to question how much of this is actually a distraction. And I talked at length about this in my previous videos, where I mentioned that I suspected that we were being monitored. And David Ross, a Nobel Prize in Physics, stated that we made ourselves known broadcasting radio signals over a century, and this could have triggered a visit. And at the speed that is coming, from where it's coming, that is apparently the Oort cloud, it would have taken 80 years to arrive. And what happened 80 years ago? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So if this is actually an alien probe and not part of Project Bluebeam, which is the last trick on the sleeve to manipulate humanity, they won't be able to control the narrative this time. So the most common thing we have with that period is Pluto in Aquarius, turning up the volume of these very key moments in history where we as a collective can choose to unite, which seems a utopia, or we can fall for the trap of the dystopia that the elites want. So let's see how the eclipse will affect the US. This eclipse falls in the 9th house of foreign matters and external issues, and this is with the south node of past, karma, and things going down in Virgo, the sign of healthcare and the workforce. And this is opposing Neptune, which represents, on one level, viruses, diseases that spread, in Aries, which is warfare. And Aries is with Saturn out of sign. Saturn is governments and limitations, constrictions, lockdowns. And Pisces is the sign of illusions and delusions and deception in the 3rd house of communication. So this is some information coming up about the pandemic and also the measures and the mandates enforced during and after the pandemic, and information about the vaccines too. And with eclipse conjunct its own ruler Mercury, but out of sign, representing news, but is combust by the proximity of the sun, and in Libra is the scales of justice, this might set the record straight. Chiron, the wounded healer, in the 4th house of homeland, this is about the hurt that it was brought to the population pretending to heal. Now, the 9th house is also the house of higher education, and we see the battles within colleges with our youth, and Mercury represents the conflicting narratives. And with Mars, that is also the bullet, and 29 critical degree in the 10th house of government, that day Mars was on Kirk's sun. And also he had Chiron, the wounded healer, square the notes of fate. And Mars is about to go 0 degree Scorpio, where we're going from defense to offense. And already the Department of Defense changed the name to the Department of War. It went from defense.gov to war.gov. You can check that online. Now, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, as I mentioned in previous video, also represents Neptune weather in Aries warfare and Saturn governments in Pisces deception. So this speaks of weather warfare, like in Operation Popeye. If you're not familiar, this is how they did weather manipulation to extend the monsoon season to delay military supplies in Vietnam. Yes, this is nothing new. And in the previous eclipse, Neptune was in the 4th house of homeland and also represents the lack of boundaries and immigration. And this was opposed Mars, which is also the knife, so we saw the stabbing of Irina in North Carolina. So we'll see how the volatile eclipse energy has been playing out throughout eclipse season. With Uranus in Gemini retrograde, people are internalizing the current events. And what else we have now in Gemini? We have transit in Wuhan. So we can all agree that the world changed with the pandemic. And historically, pandemics, economical problems, and wars are a usual triad as one bleeds into the other, creating a domino effect. And Jupiter has been magnifying the US Mercury, revealing more information about unresolved issues. And financially, Venus in Virgo in the 8th house could benefit harvest season for corporations with a September fiscal year. So I expect a good end of the year for financial markets, but before that, the eclipse can cause a shakeup as it did in March, especially since Venus is at fall in Virgo, where it might manifest as a cautious analytical closeout, demanding accountability of shared resources and debt management, and auditing or redefining the rules of engagement in contracts and allocation of assets as it happened with Dodge. So this could affect employment as well. So let's see where this eclipse is going to be felt the most. The eclipse is going down the west coast, hitting Seattle, Portland, LA. Now the Mars line is going from the west of the Great Lakes to Texas, also near Minneapolis, where we had one of the shootings. And the Mars line is going to move towards the east coast with the equinox. So some of these energies had already played out. And for the rest of the world, the eclipse line is crossing from Russia to Iran, and the Pluto-Uranus line is crossing the eclipse lines at the border of Russia. And because the eclipse line is opposed to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, is also crossing the Saturn-Neptune lines. So I expect more news coming from this area. Now, in the meantime, Putin met with Trump, and the tensions are rising between NATO and the BRIC countries. And NATO wants to increase defense, but the question is with what budget? Because the debt to GDP ratio of the US is 120 versus Russia, that is 20. So this is like owing 120 for every $100 that you earn versus 20. And Putin and Xi invoke wartime unity as a challenge to the West in the Beijing military parade. And Russia just accused the US of planning a financial reset that could wipe dollar-based assets using crypto, gold, and stablecoins that would affect the rest of the world. Sorry about that. Now let's see the degrees in Sabian Symbol. So the eclipse is in 29 degrees with 5 minutes. The net number is 2 for the degrees. So that's the number of the moon that rules the body and emotions. And then 5 is the number of Mercury, which rules the mind. So again, another indication for an all-encompassing energy, body, mind, spirit. And if we round up to 30-degree Virgo for the Sabian Symbol, so this is an urgent task to complete and a man looking to have no distractions. So the meaning is focus, devotion, duty, completion, commitment to a purpose, and the work that must be done of service in order and precision over chaos, pleasure, distraction, or diversion. And it requires concentration, responsibility, and the spiritual dignity of fulfilling one's role or mission with integrity. The shadow side is overwork, obsessive thoughts, focus, isolation, and narrowness or neglect for self-care. And that's something that we all have to watch for. Now, the Tarot correspondence is the 10th of Pentacles, representing stability, legacy, family, inheritance, long-term structures, and this is a blend of Venus and Virgo energy, which highlights the building of systems and structures that last long-term, with a focus on relationships and material security, where there's also service, contribution, and leaving something of value behind. The shadow side is rigidity and clinging too tight to traditions or being overcritical of others or measuring success by material or social achievements. Anatomically, Virgo ruled the small intestine and Mercury in the nerves. So this especially affects nervous energy that affects the GI tract. Verbal teas that are good to work with this energy is mint for stimulating the mind, cooling the digestive tract, and promote alertness. Lemon balm, which helps calming the nervous system and the digestive tract, and chamomile, which is also soothing, relaxing, and filters phytoestrogens from seed oils in our diet. Some good crystals to work with are those of green color. We have jade for vitality, harmony, and grounding, green aventurine for emotional healing and general health support, and fluorite to get tuned, to focus, and to help the analytical mind. And for the equinox, the chart is not that different because not a whole day had passed by. But there are three main differences. The changing of the planets from sign. What marks the equinox is the crossing of the sun over the celestial equator, which is the Aries Libra axis, which ushers the change of season and is a moment where light and darkness are equal, representing both balancing of the conscious and the unconscious mind. And the sun ingress into Libra seeks for harmony, peace, relationships, fairness, and is also the change between the outgoing solar energy of the summer and the inward receptive energy of the winter. So it represents a practical and soulful integration, which is as well the energy of the eclipse. Now, with the luminaries changing into Libra, we also have the change of Mars into Scorpio. That is as well aspecting Pluto, which is the higher octave of Mars. And this represents death, like in fall. But Mars is a trigger, is an action, is aggression. And as we've seen recently, both the bullet and the knife. And in Scorpio is all or nothing. There's no room for halfway. From our actions to our feelings and ambitions, these run deep. On a positive side, it confers magnetism, courage, resilience in high-stakes situation, growth and regeneration, as is the lower octave of Pluto, that is the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation. But on the shadow side is obsessing, is secrecy, is manipulation, and is revenge when blocked or frustrated, which is what we need to avoid at all cost. Mars in Scorpio is also very strategic and measured, which is what we want because Mars is hot, but Scorpio is fixed water, like ice. So it tempers the heat of Mars and paradoxically makes it more powerful. So the advice here is to think before you act, as not to suffer the consequences of your actions. So instead of reacting, act from a place of conviction that is in line with the truth, and that's what Scorpio represents, in order to empower yourself and remain in control. So as the energy of the eclipse lasts for about 6 months up until next eclipse season in March next year, the energies of the equinox extend for about 3 months up until the winter solstice. So here we have an overlapping of energies. Now let's see how this will play out for you depending on your sign. So for Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your sector of routine, health, work, and pets. So there is a new beginning associated with leaving something behind that is most likely associated with an unhealthy habit that you need to terminate in order to start a new health regime or an exercise program or a cleaner diet or all of the above. This might also be about not running on adrenals and trying to have a healthier work-life balance. Alternatively, you might be taking care of someone else or even an animal. And this is also a good time to adopt a pet, especially a service pet that might help you deal with stress and anxiety. For Taurus, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your sector of creativity, recreation, and procreation. So this is about doing what you love and having fun with it. Maybe you've been working too hard and it's time for you to take a break. Anywhere from getting a new creative outlet from an artistic pursuit to a sport or else. This could also involve dating or actually ending a date that is not working out for you in order to explore your options. Or alternatively, you could be having children, or on the opposite, your children could be leaving the nest and freeing up space for hobbies and other pursuits. For Gemini, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this eclipse falls in your 4th house of home, roots, and family. So you could be moving or selling and buying real estate, or you could be changing your living situation, like ditching a roommate in order to go solo, or on the contrary, you could be expanding your family. Alternatively, you might be getting over some family drama or self-limiting belief related to your upbringing and conditioning in order to set yourself free and start anew. For Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this eclipse falls in your 3rd house of communications and peers, education, and mindset. So you could be terminating a program in order to start a new one, or you could be changing your communication style in order to walk your talk and talk your walk, or you could be letting go of someone like a peer, a sibling, a neighbor, a coworker that is not matching your vibe and holding you back, or you could be changing the way you think about yourself or what you can do in the world. For Leo, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your second house of self-worth, values, and income. You could be changing the way you make money, like terminating one income stream in order to start a new one, or you could be letting go of an old self-limiting belief and have a new sense of self-worth, which in turn could attract more money as per the law of attraction. Or you could be reorganizing your priorities regarding what you value and your possessions, like what is the cost of having no time, for example. Virgo, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this eclipse is all about you, from your identity to your looks. So you're letting go of an old version of yourself in order to give birth to a new version of yourself that is more aligned with your soul calling. And that could also reflect in your physical appearance, anywhere from a new style to a new haircut, losing weight, or else. And this is both internal and external, which will affect how others perceive you and also the way they treat you. Libra, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your house of spirituality and mental health, institutions, and rest. This is also known as the house of self-undoing, as is related to escapism and substance use. So there is a new beginning at the cost of something that you're letting go, like starting a new treatment or a rehab in order to ditch alcohol or any unhealthy habit, or you could be joining a church or a meditation group or some kind of program or institution, or alternatively, you could be letting go of an outdated conditioning that was limiting your spiritual life. For Scorpio, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your 11th house of groups and association, friends, or the collective in general. So you could be having a new beginning with a role that you play in your community, or you could be having a new role or even a new community, which might be at the cost of an old community. This could also be related to networking, co-workers, or contacts that come from your profession and your reputation, or you could be starting or joining a noble cause. Either way, this aligns you with your tribe. For Sagittarius, this falls in your house of career and reputation, so there could be a new position within your career, or a new project or proposal, or even the possibility to start in a new industry altogether. Now, this might come at the cost of an old position or reputation that you had in your field. Either way, this is aligning you more with your soul's purpose and your mission and the service that you provide to the world and the legacy that you want to leave here on Earth. For Capricorn, this falls in your 9th house of expansion, travel, teaching, and higher goals. So you could be going from learning to teaching, or from writing to publishing, or from playing local to playing international, or any form of expansion in line with your higher goals and aspirations. And this might come at the cost of something that you were used to, and as they say, a new life will cost you the old one. For Aquarius, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your 8th house of trust, intimacy, and shared resources. So this is a new beginning that comes as a result of an ending, most likely regarding other people's money. And this could be money related to your spouse or ex-spouse, as well as money related to a business partnership, or even an institution like a bank, like paying off a loan or getting a new mortgage. And this could also be related to inheritance, taxes, and even insurance claims. And wherever there are shared resources, there are also trust issues. And in the case of a significant other, there could be intimacy issues as well. So there is a door closing here that allows for the opening of another door. And finally, for Pisces, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this falls in your 7th house of others, anywhere from personal relationships to professional relationships, legal matters, and even public enemies. So there's something new or someone new at the cost of something or someone old, or there is a redefining of the rules of engagement with a significant other, anywhere from the personal to the professional and beyond, or simply you're just learning how to relate better or maybe choose better people in your life. And with that, I will leave you today. It takes me more than a minute to make this and just a sec to like, so please, please, please share, like, subscribe, and all the good things that bring good karma. And where I can help you the most is with a private consultation or again with my book. Thank you very much for your time. See you in the next one. Namaste.